Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 383, Die of the Dead.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Go to their website, check them out. They have game toppers of a wide variety of sizes. They just came out with 3.0 Kickstarters, which means they now have a new variety of mats that you can go in and check out. Legs that are available for most of their toppers, different accessories, dice towers, drink holders, all sorts of great stuff. Beautify your game space, improve your game night. Check out GameToppersLLC.com.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Dave Holliday.
I'm Logan Howard.
And I am Andy Holliday.
Check out our webpage. Cool things on there. Lots of blog posts by Logan. The rest of us are picking up the slack.
Wait, what? I thought it was only supposed to be occasional thoughts from you. People can't really stand too much from me.
I get that, but recently, everything's been coming up Logan.
I am sorry.
I've actually been some really good articles, Logan. So don't think you have to apologize for anything.
I'll try better next time. I think I'm far too clever when I try to think of some good lines here and there.
I do think you are far too clever, yes. We have links to our photos on our Instagram site. Also links to all the past episodes that we've had. So if you want to go way back to episode 1 and listen to our thoughts on Coup, well, I guess not your guys's. So my thoughts on Coup.
Wow, 5 years ago.
We're over 5 years, so we're getting close to that 6-year mark.
Is 6 years normally a mark? Is that an anniversary? Should have got you something 10?
Maybe. We'd look that up on Google and see what you owe me. But anyways, check out our website, meeplenation.com.
This week we are discussing Die of the Dead, a Dia de Muertos themed dice rolling game for 2 to 5 players. It's the Day of the Dead, and players take the roles of friendly spirits guiding souls from Mictlan, the world of the dead, to the land of the living. The first player to guide souls up the 9 levels back to the land of living is the winner. To do this, players will choose, manipulate, and roll caskets containing dice representing souls. They will have candles, incense, marigolds, and the bread of the dead, but to hope for a little luck. Die of the Dead has beautiful Mexican art inspired by the tales and culture surrounding Dia de Muertos. Care has been taken to make the game as fun as possible while still staying respectful to its roots. The first thing you notice of this game when you pull it out of the box is just how amazing the art is. Super traditional, super cool. 2 to 5 player game, 30 to 50 minutes, designed by James Allen and Mark Stockton-Pitt. Artwork was done by Rosenbell.
You nail it when you say that the first thing you see in this game is the art. It's evident on the cover of the box, it's evident on the caskets. Every aspect of this game is very reminiscent of the Day of the Dead.
My favorite part of all the artwork is you don't see it a whole lot throughout the game, and that's the bottom of the caskets.
That's just what I was going to say.
The bottom of the caskets, because that's where all the skulls are. Each one's unique, and they are really cool. Like I said, you don't really get to see them throughout the game.
It just goes to show to how much commitment they were to doing the art for all these caskets. I'm actually really surprised they didn't put more design into the dice. I mean, it would have been a little busy, but I'm surprised because they put so much thought into everywhere else on the game.
Or are we putting the caskets upside down?
I was just going to say,
when you open the casket, you're supposed to have the lid so you can actually see what dice are in there. It makes more sense.
We've been playing it wrong.
We've been playing it with the caskets upside down. And sure enough, there's a picture of it. We've been playing it with the caskets upside down. Scratch that. The artwork on the top of the coffins are cool as heck. We just haven't been playing it right.
And then they just complete the design on the other side.
Yeah.
Honestly, if we were all a little more articulate, we could probably spend the entire episode just talking about the art. For me, I feel that way. I love it. I mean, there's so much history, so much culture, the heart of Mexican culture, and you see that in this game.
Speaking of Mexican culture, Andy, you're much more in tune to the Mexican culture and a better Mexican than I am. Does number 9 mean anything for the level of stairs they have to go to?
That's a good question. I'm not very well versed in Dia de los Muertos. I don't know exactly as far as all the traditions and culture of that. when I was down there, so I lived in Mexico for 2 years, and I know that my favorite part, the end of October, when that time of year came around, was the bread. Pan de Muerto, which they actually have here as one of the tokens that you can use, is amazing. I could not wait for that time of year to come around. But as far as the 9 levels, I'm sure that all is very lined up with what the culture is. I would imagine as detailed as all this is, that would not surprise me.
As detailed and as thematic, I think they did a good job of keeping the theme useful in this game and having it mean something.
There are 4 different caskets. Periodically through the game, you're going to be adding dice to these caskets, and there's different actions that you can take that will be underneath each of these caskets, and these caskets move and will shift. Maybe the blue casket be above one specific action, but maybe by the time it gets to the next person's turn, those will have shifted and those dice will be concealed. So only the first casket is open that allows the players to actually see what dice are in there.
So I love that aspect where you have the dice. One of your actions, you can add souls to the casket. These caskets will shift down the line.
When you start the game, you look at the number of players, and depending on how many players you have playing, will determine who has dice in the casket. Each player has a player board. You will add souls to that, and those are the souls that you can actually put in the casket. You also have a pool of dice, a pool of souls that during the game add to your player board, and in turn, those dice will be the ones that you can add to the caskets. For example, the first player gets to add a soul to casket number 1. Player 2 gets to add a soul to casket number 1 and casket number 2. Player 3 adds one to 1 and 2 and gets to put one on their player board. Player 4 adds one to casket 1 and 2 and 3. And player 5 adds one to caskets 1, 2, and 3 and places a soul on their player board. That's kind of where the layout is when you start the game. Like I said, people that start with dice and those souls in those caskets, but you only see casket number 1 throughout the game at any time in the game. Now, there are ways to peek. The public knowledge is always casket 1. It's always open.
Memory is a big part of the game, because as you're going through, unless you have one of those options in which to peek into the casket, you're taking actions just off of what you're hoping you remembers inside this said casket, instead of, oh yeah, this will benefit me, or the odds are this. It's, I hope this is what's going to happen.
Right, and there's some actions where you're shaking the dice. Maybe we ought to go through what the actions are to begin with.
So the first one, which is the one that's open, either you get to prepare a soul, so you add it from your pool and add it to your board, up to 2, normally up to 3 spots open on your board, so you can prepare up to 2. If there's multiple colors, it's not just me that has my colors inside the casket, then we roll it, multiple colors, and then we roll a 1, we shift the casket, the 4 spot becomes 1, and we reveal that one, close the lid on the other one, and just move them down the line. You can also take soul directly from your pool, just 1, and add it into the casket.
And that's the primary way that caskets get shifted. Most of the time. If it's going to shift, that's what's going to do it.
So simple, everything shifts to the right. The casket that's in the 4th position comes around to the 1st position and gets opened.
I love that. As you're shifting those, like you mentioned, Logan, it becomes very much a memory game where you have to remember, was this the casket of mine that I had everything in? How many dice do I have? How many souls do I have in this casket? How many souls do I have in that casket? Try to remember that when you take one of those later actions that we still need to talk about. You're going to shake the casket, reveal it. Hopefully you've remembered how many of your dice are in there. I really like this element because it adds that memory and the randomness of the dice.
You speak of randomness, but I like the fact it seems, I mean, there's benefits to focusing on trying to get as many of your dice in one casket as possible, but also having your dice spread out can be nice because you do have the chance of getting one of your dice to ascend up the stairway, even if you only have 1 die in there. But your odds are obviously greater if you have the most dice in that casket. So that moves us to action number 2, which action number 2, the main action is you can prepare up to 2 souls. Preparing souls, you take the souls from your pool and put them on your player board. And then the secondary action is you shake and you open the casket. You compare the results, and whoever has the highest value die gets to prepare a soul as well.
And so that goes back to what Nate was just talking about, right? If I have a lot of dice in casket number 2, and I'm going to prepare a couple of souls, it's nice because I'm like, oh, I have a lot in there. So chances are I'm going to be able to prepare a 3rd soul. But it's all about odds. It's not just like, oh, I have the most, so I automatically win. Even though that's a tiebreaker in some of the scenarios. It's interesting how that comes about. It's always good to have a spare soul waiting to be prepared, because otherwise some of the extra benefits that we'll talk about later, you can't use them if you don't have something prepared.
Yeah, that can definitely hurt you. Having those souls prepared on your player board can be huge in this game. The last thing with that second action is, once again, if a 1 is rolled, everything shifts. In that way, it is a lot like the first action.
So the third action, shake, rattle, and roll that casket and open it up and reveal souls. If they have the same color and the same number, they go back to the free souls. So they come out of that casket and then they're returned to the respective player's dice pool, which then that player again is going to have to add it to their player board as a prepared soul, again taking that first action to dump it into the coffin to start that whole process over again.
So it's something that it can screw somebody over.
Right. This is an action that you would more likely do when you have none or few dice in that casket.
Yeah, because that can hurt you.
Remember.
Yeah, exactly. Because that can really hurt you if which casket has the majority of your dice and ends up being yours, right?
You can't remove all of a player's dice. If they have 2 dice in there and both of them come up the same number, if I was blue and I rolled 2 blue 1s, I don't remove both of those dice. The player will always have at least 1 die remaining in there, so only 1 die would get removed at that point. The secondary action is you can gain one of the tokens, and there's 4 different tokens. And each of these tokens, an action that you can use at any point. So you have the incense, candle, the marigolds, and the bread. The incense will allow you to add 1 to the die. You can't take a 6 to a 1, but you can take a 1 to a 2 all the way up.
But you could also minus them.
Oh, it is? Okay.
One of the actions in which you can use that incense is if you have 3 dice and they're all showing 5s, well, you can take one of them and move it down so you keep 2 of the dice.
And each of these have 2 actions. The incense also, you just shake the casket again. If you have 3 dice in there and they all come up as 3 blue 5s, you can spend that incense to shake it again and hopefully have different numbers. The candle will allow you to, at the start of any player's turn, you can shift the casket. So if somebody's getting ready to advance up the stairs, you can hurry up and switch those caskets before they've taken any actions, Logan. And then thwart that attempt for them to go up the stairs. Or the other option is you can actually go ahead and swap 2 caskets, which then disrupts people's, if they can't remember the color of the coffin, or you're advancing your coffin 1 step closer to that 4th action.
This became kind of a sore spot in the games that we played. That candle is a cool ability, but one thing that we were talking about with it is it would have really made sense for them to write things a little more clearly and maybe define how it's played and when it's used, and that on their turn they're just going to quickly grab a casket and go and hope that Logan's got that candle, hope he doesn't sneak that candle in there before I...
And that's what's hard about it. This game, it's simplified. You only have 4 actions in front of you. So it's not like it's overly complicated. What am I going to do? So it's your turn. You're just going to take your turn. And you're waiting for their turn to start. And then you're trying to use the token at the appropriate time. And then if they already reach for things, you're like, oh, well.
There's not really a window.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a little tough.
Well, there is a window, but it's very small. As soon as someone says, okay, I'm done, that's your window. Someone usually knows exactly what they want to do. It's a few second window.
Yeah, even Dave takes fast turns in this game. Token number 3, the marigold. At the start of your turn, before you have chosen a casket, you get to peek into any casket. And then if the player has multiple souls in that casket, you can pull one of those souls out. You might be able to get an advantage or a hedge advantage of somebody else. The other option is you can add a soul, either one of your free ones that's in your pool or one of your prepared ones on your board, and you can add that casket number 1. If there are any of your opponent's souls in casket number 1, you can remove one of them, and that goes back to their pool.
That can make a big shift.
It can.
That can be a big darn deal.
A big darn deal.
Mm-hmm.
You are absolutely right. Finally, the bread. The first action on the bread is play after another player has chosen a casket. Before they shake it, add one of your prepared souls to that casket. So it has to be on your player board and not your pool. So it has to be a prepared soul. And you can drop it in that casket. I found that to be very advantageous for...
I used that a lot. Not just me, but I think that's
I think it was
the
our most popular token that we used when we played. I think it's such a crucial ability. And every time I felt so disadvantaged to have the bread, but on my turn, put all of my prepared souls in the casket. Because I'm like, if only I would have had one more prepared soul.
And one thing to note is you can't have multiples of the same token at a single time. So you can't just stack up on
right,
bread.
You can't hoard them. Yeah. You can have 2 tokens, and they both have to be different. If you gain a 3rd token...
You can freely exchange them.
Yeah.
from what you have.
The other action on the bread, before another player chooses a casket, add up to 2 prepared souls to an empty casket. So if there is an empty casket, you can put 2 of your prepared souls into that. With all these tokens, you don't get both of these options with each token. The actions are represented by a double-sided card. Depending on which side of that card you're using in that game, depends on which of that action you get, the A action or the B action. The first action's on the A side and the second action's on the B side.
This adds a lot of variability to the game. You can always switch it up, and it also adds a pretty simple way for them to come out with new content or new expansions. Simply add another card for each token, and you can really change a lot of how the game is played. Going through the A and B side of each of these really can change a lot. Like the bread that you guys used a lot. With the other side of the bread makes it completely different. Really, really change how you play those things.
I definitely think that the bread would be less useful in that case because it seemed like it was rare, especially once the game got going, that there was an empty casket.
Right.
We were pretty good about shifting them, so there was always dice being added to one of the caskets.
When we first played, I didn't think that the tokens were going to be that big of a deal. There's the one spot where you can gain a token. Other than that, I just didn't think that they were going to play as big a role as they did. It seems like they came into play quite a bit. And so I think that changing up the abilities that the tokens do.
In our first game, the tokens didn't seem like we were going after him. Then after we kind of had that discovery and started to use them more effectively, preceding games after that, like Andy was saying, that bread was something that everybody was going after. I always felt like the candle was one.
Candle's the one that I was loving and using a lot of that changes the pip on the dice.
I went for the incense and the bread. Those were the two that
I'm sorry, it is the incense that I went for, yeah.
This is the main way to get tokens, which we'll get to the other way to get when we talk about the stairs. But it's also the most confrontational action that you can have, and it's also the one that you can ruin your own chances if you don't have that proper memory. Because the only way to get those tokens on a regular basis is take that third casket action. To do that, potentially taking your dice out of the casket as well.
Right.
To your point, Dave's going to explain the fourth action about getting dice onto the stairs. I didn't take that action very often, yet I still have quite a few tokens. That being said, at least with that action, you can choose what tokens you get. You can pick any of them, whereas if you're putting dice on the stairs, you may be limited based on which stair you're putting your die on at that point in time. In fact, you may not get anything if you're the last person to play on the stair.
So maybe we should talk about that fourth casket action.
Yeah, so the fourth casket, the main action is you shake and then open that casket, and then you compare all the souls in there. You ascend 2 of the winner's souls. We all have dice in there. Andy has a 6. The next highest is a 3. Andy 1. If he has multiple dice in there, we would send 2 of his souls up the stairs.
And this is where the tiebreaker in the casket, if you have the highest, so you have like 2 people that have a 6, tiebreaker goes down to who has the most dice. I have a 6 and Andy has a 6. Then it goes down to Andy has a 4 on his second dice and I have a 3 on my other dice and a 1 on the other dice. It doesn't add them together. It's I have 3 total dice, so then I would be the victorious.
Right. If Andy only had 1 die in there, that single 6, then only 1 die would be moved up. If it is just a flat-out tie, both people would get 1 die to move up. The Ascended Souls do not have to be the ones with the highest value showing. I don't know why it's important they tell us that, but
it is important because one of the things you can do when you place your die on the stairs is you can gain an upgraded die that has a skull on it. That skull can be any number you want. If you rolled a skull, it's a 6. You can choose to keep that skull in there and get rid of one of your dice that aren't as good, right? Or one of your upgrades.
Great point.
So having that skull, if you roll doubles, you can say, well, the skull is a different number. If you're wanting to move the caskets, you're in casket number 1 and you roll it and you roll the skull, you can say, this is a 1, so we shift the caskets. Or in casket number 2, same thing, you roll it and you can say that skull's a 1, so you shift the caskets. Push your casket so that hopefully somebody's going to be rolling casket number 4. Hopefully your skull will come up again and you can ascend another soul up those stairs.
We've alluded to a couple of times the bonuses that you get going up the stairs.
So the bonus is you can get up the stairs, which each stair is different, so it's not like each stair has the same amount. Each stair has 5 spots. There's a blank spot, as Andy said earlier, so if you're playing a 5-player game and you're the last one to go onto the first stair, you don't get anything. But the other variety of them are, there's the 4 tokens, and one that is a free, you prepare soul from your pool to your player board. The other one is, I believe it's called the City of the Dead tile, is you take one of those dice that Andy was talking about that has the wild for the 5 and 6, take that and you can add it to your pool, and then you can prepare it and add it to the caskets.
Each player has 3 of those dice, right?
Yes.
Each player has the opportunity to add 3 of those wild dice into their soul pool.
What we've kind of cut off from Dave is that the other half of this action is that you shake the casket. Whoever's the winner, they get to move their dice up. The other half of the action, they can either take an additional die of theirs and add it onto the stairs, or they can take one of these 3 dice from the city and add it to their pool.
When you say they could add a 3rd die to the stairs, that die has to be in casket number 4, right? Can't come from their player pool.
Right. What you were saying, Nate. In theory, it could be they get a 3rd die up the stairs, but it could just be I have 5 dice in that casket, Andy has 2, and Nathan has 1. Well, Nathan still won because Nathan rolled a 6 and Andy and I didn't roll as high. Nathan went up the stairs, but then I take one of my other dice and I can put it on the stairs as well.
Because you were the one that took the action, right?
Because I took the action. Right. Player order goes Nathan won, so then he would have the first chance of the stairs to pick the rewards. Then I would be able to pick my reward.
The 3 options you have on that secondary part of that action is you can either move the caskets, or you can ascend a soul, or you can gain a power soul. The power soul is the actual name of that special die that has the skulls on it.
And the way you win is getting souls up to the top of the staircase. Once you get your 9th soul to the top of the stairs, the first player to do that wins the game. It's interesting the plays that we've done with this and how quickly the game can turn around.
Yes.
Yeah, you think somebody's running away with it. They're up to stair number 6 already. And then you see Logan, who's on stair number 1, come up and just pow, 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 pow. He's right there on step number 9.
I don't think that's ever happened to me in this game, because I think I've only won the one time, and it's because I got up to number 5 or 6 super early, and then sat there the rest of the game until everybody caught up and passed me, and then finally proceeded past it.
I almost had you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple, right? Your first die goes on step number 1. The next time you ascend a die, you can put it on step number 2. And so you'll have 2 dice now on the stairs. And so you need to keep preparing souls so that you can add them to the caskets, because the next time you get one, it's on step 3, and now you have 3 dice that are in there, no longer in the caskets.
So they have 2 variations of the game. They have one where you don't have any asymmetric powers. Right. And then they have another one where, depending on which color you play, you have unique powers that affect your starting place and give you a special ability throughout the game.
In the last play that we did, power that Logan had was pretty awesome, I thought. He could remove dice from the lower tiers of the steps, still maintain his place, the height that he was on the steps, but have more dice available to increase the odds that he will be ascending.
Right, so he was putting more dice in the caskets.
Yeah.
Theory, right. It's because I was able to take those dice off of the lower end of the stairs and add them to my pool. I still had to take the actions to put them back in. There was just more dice available.
I won the first time when I had that asymmetric power too, but I actually never used the power on it. No, I don't think I used it a single time. I just managed to roll well, or someone else was rolling, and so probably that's why I rolled well.
I was going to say, I don't believe you.
It wasn't me.
What do you guys think about the asymmetric powers? Do you like them? Do you feel they're balanced?
I think they each have their place. I think it gives the game really good replayability because it allows you to introduce new players to the game. It's flat. It's easy to explain the game and to play the game. But for those who have played the game more often, it gives that nice variety in play, in action, spices up that game. And I'm all about games having replayability, something that increases the replayability. One, the game is beautiful. It's simple. But then you also add in those asymmetrical powers. I mean, that's just the trifecta. Angels sing when you play this game.
And it could just be because of the playstyle that I go into the game playing. There are some powers that I wouldn't really use. Like the first time we played with asymmetric powers, I can't remember what color it was. The ability you get at the beginning of the game is that you get a free token, And then your ability throughout the game is that you always get to switch a token for whatever one you want or is available. So it's not necessarily, oh, well, there's only the marigold available on the stair, but I don't want that, I want the bread. I can wait until my next turn and switch it out for the bread when something's available.
I thought Andy Poops used that really well in our last play.
That's how I caught up to you, is because of that power.
Then there was another one, I want to say it was the yellow one, Dave, because it's one you had. Each turn, you were able to peek in a coffin. It was memory / do I like this one? Oh, well, I only have one die in there. I guess I'm not going to take that action. Which I thought was probably one of the more powerful ones.
For me, I didn't love it. I think partially trying to remember the dice is something in a game like this that I would be okay at. And so it just made me go, well, I'm not going to even worry about trying to remember. It was just almost like a redundancy. But I love when games throw in asymmetry. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. But I have a problem with it in this game because it's attached to the color, right? Because I want to be yellow, but I don't want to have that same power all the time. I want to switch it up and try different things.
Yeah, because we do force you to pick randomly, and you had to prove yourself to the game. Pick yellow a couple of times.
Realistically, Dave, you could use any colored dice you want, so you could just use a different color and then still keep your yellow dice. So
that's the same argument we have with Space Base, where it doesn't matter which color of cards you have underneath them.
But it does.
So I've kind of already expressed my love for the game. I think it's great. It's simple. It's fun. The artwork is fantastic. The theme is there. The feel is there. I highly recommend the game. I think it's a superb game.
I'm glad Logan backed this. I almost did and kind of wish I would have also. It would be one that I would like to have in my collection. Like Nathan said, the theme is amazing. I just absolutely love it. And the artwork is... The caskets they're beautiful. The gameplay is really fun. I hope they come out with an expansion and maybe change up an action or two, or like Dave said, maybe add some different abilities for the tokens. Very solid game. I've enjoyed playing it.
I have also enjoyed playing it. I didn't sound convinced, did I?
No, you didn't sound convinced at all.
Okay. No, I think it's a good game. One thing that we didn't mention is there is an open casket variant to just kind of increase, I guess, some of the tactics that are involved. You play with open caskets the whole time, so you know what dice are where. It would also change the way you would play.
So Dave is always yellow when we play that.
I'm always yellow anyway.
You can peek as much as you want.
Your asymmetric powers are amazing.
It suggests when you do that you don't use the alternate asymmetry or the marigold, side A.
Yeah, this game, it's a great game. Beautiful, as we've said multiple times. Culturally, it's fun. Great choice of a dice game to play. Just a good time. It's really simple. It's really easy. It's very approachable to be able to sit down. So even if only one person's played the game before, I think you can add in the asymmetric powers and explain to everybody as you're playing. It's that easy of a game. If you play with younger people, you can play with open caskets. Dave can be yellow all he wants. It's a good game.
And it's not very long, which is nice. I mean, it does play quickly.
Trifecta again. Angel's still singing, though.
Yes.
An immaculate chorus?
Sure.
So that is Die of the Dead. I think we've all enjoyed playing it. I know I have. We highly recommend it.
Until next time.
We'll see you climbing the stairs, hoping to reach that 9th level.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter, @MeepleNation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.